If you have diabetes and you've been avoiding fruit for years, I'm going to tell you something today that might feel uncomfortable at first. Some of that fruit you've been avoiding is actually fine, and some of what you've been eating instead is doing far more damage. I'll walk you through every major myth about fruit and diabetes one by one, and at the end, I'll tell you the single best fruit for people with blood sugar issues. Stay until the end. I'm Dr. Stoll, endocrinologist. Let's begin. Let me start with the first myth. And this one genuinely surprises me every time I hear it. Fruit destroys your liver. That's the claim. Too much fruit leads to fatty liver disease. Fat builds up in your liver cells. Your liver stops working properly. Sounds pretty alarming, right? And look, there's a small kernel of truth buried in there. Large amounts of fructose are associated with fatty liver disease. The research does support that. But here's what most people get wrong. There are two sources of fructose in the American diet. The first is fruit itself, and we'll get to that. The second, and this is the one that actually matters, is high fructose corn syrup. That's the real culprit behind every one of those destroyed liver stories. Not apples, not pears. This stuff is in everything. It's in soda. It's in most bottled sauces and salad dressings. It's in granola bars, in bread with a 6-week shelf life, in breakfast cereal, in canned fruit packed in syrup. When someone eats that kind of processed diet every single day, they're not getting fructose by the spoonful, they're getting it by the bucket, and they don't even notice it happening. That's the concentration that actually overwhelms the liver. That's where the real problem is. Not your morning bowl of strawberries. Think about it. How many apples can you actually eat in one sitting? 2, maybe 3. Your body puts the brakes on long before you could do any real harm. The fiber, the volume, the fullness. It all works as a built-in limiter. You physically cannot get the fructose load from whole fruit that someone casually gets from 2 large sodas at lunch. That's the difference. So the liver scare from fruit, set it aside. The problem is somewhere else entirely. Eat your fruit. Your liver is fine. Now for myth number 2, and this one irritates me more than almost anything I hear in practice. You can only eat fruit in the morning. After 6 p.m., absolutely nothing sweet. If you eat fruit at 7 in the evening, it converts directly to fat, right on schedule, like some kind of metabolic alarm clock going off in your body. Listen to me carefully. Your body doesn't run a 9 to 5 shift. There are no internal switches that flip at 6:01 p.m. and start converting everything into fat storage. A calorie at noon and a calorie at 8 in the evening are the same calorie to your body. Energy balance plays out over weeks, not hours. If you consistently eat less than you burn, weight goes down. If you consistently overeat, it goes up. The time on the clock is irrelevant to that equation. I'm not sure where this rule came from, but it has zero physiological basis, and I run into it constantly. You're adults. You can handle real physiology. So if you want berries after dinner, eat your berries after dinner. Please, I'm asking you, stop punishing yourself with arbitrary time restrictions that don't work and only make your relationship with food worse. Okay, now for myth number 3. This is the one most of you came here for. Diabetics can't eat fruit. Not ever. It has fructose. Fructose raises blood sugar. Fruit is the enemy. Sounds logical on the surface until you look at what the actual evidence says. The ADA, the American Diabetes Association, states plainly in their current guidelines that whole fruit is part of a healthy diet for people with diabetes. The recommended amount is about 200 grams a day, 2 medium handfuls. And here's why fruit actually helps with diabetes rather than just coexisting with it. Fiber slows carbohydrate absorption. It helps control blood sugar spikes. It doesn't drive them up. Vitamins are necessary. Antioxidants are necessary. You cannot eliminate an entire food category and call that progress. I see the same pattern over and over. People with diabetes who've cut out all fruit, and in its place they're eating processed food, and they genuinely believe they're doing everything right. I look at a typical breakfast. White toast, sausage links, bottled ketchup, but no strawberries because strawberries have sugar in them, right? That's not a breakfast. That's a one-way ticket to the cardiologist. And it's kind of amazing I have to say that out loud. Here's the bottom line. Fruit is fine with diabetes. That's not up for debate. The only question is which fruit and how much. That's what we're covering right now. Let's start with the ones that raise blood sugar faster than others. Grapes are at the top of the list, about 8 grams of fructose per standard portion. That's significant. Then apples, roughly 7.5 grams, just slightly less than grapes. And here's where a very stubborn myth lives that I run into constantly. I don't know what other doctors are telling their patients, but some of my colleagues still specifically recommend apples for diabetics. Look at the numbers. The sugar content is essentially the same as grapes. Does that make sense? Because it doesn't make sense to me either. Now, you're probably thinking, Dr. Stoll, but what about green apples? I've been told green apples are safe because they're tart, they have less sugar. Let me be direct, that's wrong. The fructose content in a green apple is virtually identical to a red one. The difference is mathematically insignificant. The color of the skin tells you nothing about the sugar inside. Where this myth came from, I genuinely don't know, but it refuses to die, and I run into it all the time. A green apple is an apple. Color doesn't count. We're done with that one. Third on the list is pear, about 7 grams, then sweet cherries, then persimmon. Persimmon deserves a special note. It's astringent. It dries out your mouth. It tastes almost medicinal. You'd never guess it's sweet. But tartness and astringency come from organic acids, and those have nothing to do with sugar content. They're completely different compounds. A lot of people with diabetes get burned here. They were eating something tart, assumed everything was fine, and then saw elevated blood sugar and had no idea where it came from. Check the nutrition facts, not the taste. With these 5, you want to be intentional, not banned, just intentional. My usual approach is don't eat them alone as a standalone snack. Add them to a main meal or right after one. The fiber and protein from the rest of your food slows the sugar absorption significantly. Or start with a small portion, check your personal response, and work from there. But I wouldn't build your entire daily 200 grams around these 5, and I wouldn't cut them out completely either. There are no totally forbidden foods. It's always about dose and context. Now, the good news, and there's a lot of it, berries are first on the good list, all berries. Strawberries have about 2.5 grams of fructose, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, all in roughly the same range. That's 3 times less than grapes. And berries are high in fiber with a strong satiety effect. You eat a handful of blueberries and you're not immediately reaching for another. That natural break matters a lot for blood sugar control. Citrus is also in a solid range. Tangerines, about 2.5 grams of fructose. Oranges, slightly less. Grapefruit, pomelo, all good choices for diabetics. Low sugar, high fiber, good vitamin C. Grapefruit, in particular, acts almost like a natural appetite regulator. It fills you up fast. I keep frozen blueberries and raspberries in my freezer at all times. I throw them into Greek yogurt in the morning or eat a handful straight from the bag. Started doing this a few years ago, haven't stopped. No blood sugar spikes, no prep work, no effort. It just works. And I promised you 2 best fruits for diabetics. Here they are. First, avocado. If you didn't know, avocado is technically a fruit, not a vegetable, and it has almost 0 fructose. It doesn't move your blood sugar at all. What it does have is a significant amount of monounsaturated fat, exactly what the cardiovascular system needs. And with diabetes, cardiovascular risk is already elevated. That's established medicine. Avocado works in your favor there. I eat it almost every day. Sliced with salt, sometimes with lemon juice. Simple. No fuss. If it's not already in your regular rotation, put it there. But I know that's not what you came here for. You didn't come for avocado. So here's number 2, and this is the real answer. Kiwi. Now you're probably thinking, Dr. Stoll, seriously? Kiwi. Out of everything kiwi? Yes, absolutely seriously. Here's why. 1. Kiwi is relatively low in fructose. It raises blood sugar moderately without sharp peaks. 2. Vitamin C. Kiwi has more vitamin C than an orange, noticeably more. When blood sugar is chronically elevated, your body burns through vitamin C faster, and deficiency is more common in diabetics than in the general population. 3. Vitamin K, which your blood vessels need for healthy clotting and vascular function. But the main reason I'm so enthusiastic about kiwi, and this is the part nobody expects me to say, is what it does for digestion, specifically for regularity. I know that's not the most glamorous topic, but for people over 50, especially with diabetes, constipation is a genuine clinical problem that doesn't get talked about enough. And kiwi actually addresses it, not just helps a little. It works. 2 to 3 kiwis a day, and within a few days, you'll feel a real difference. And here's something most people think sounds strange until they try it. I eat kiwi with the skin on. Yes, the fuzzy skin. That's where a meaningful portion of the fiber and antioxidants are concentrated. Just wash the kiwi very thoroughly first, otherwise the effect on your digestive system will be more convincing than you bargained for. Wash it well and eat it like an apple. Try it once. Don't throw tomatoes at me, just try it first. Now let's talk dried fruit. This is a completely separate category and needs to be treated that way. Raisins, dried apricots, dates, prunes. A lot of people assume dried fruit is basically the same thing as fresh fruit. It's not even close. Here's the thing. Dried fruit is the same fruit with the water removed. The size shrank dramatically. The fructose content stayed exactly the same. And because the portion looks small, you can easily eat far more in one sitting and get a much heavier sugar load than you'd ever get from fresh fruit. Think about a small handful of raisins versus a large bowl of fresh grapes. Those are not remotely comparable amounts of food, but the raisins carry the fructose of far more grapes than you could eat fresh in one sitting. It's like taking an entire orange and pressing it down into 4 small bites. Doesn't look like much, but every gram of sugar from that whole orange is still in there. Treat dried fruit like candy. Not forbidden, but like candy. There are real vitamins and minerals in there. I'm not disputing that. But they spike blood sugar hard, especially with regular consumption. Keep your portion to 1 small handful, no more than what fits flat in your palm. If the daily limit for fresh fruit is 200 grams, 2 good handfuls. For dried fruit, it's 1 small palm's worth. Go over that, and you've overdone it without even realizing it. Last myth, and then we pull everything together. Frozen fruit is inferior to fresh. The vitamins die in the freezer. Buy fresh only. That's nonsense. Here's why. Proper commercial freezing takes ripe fruit and freezes it very rapidly at an extremely low temperature, something called flash freezing. The fast freeze creates tiny ice crystals that don't rupture the cell walls inside the fruit. The cell structure stays intact. Vitamins and minerals stay put. There is some loss, yes, but it's around 5% of the original content. That's a rounding error. For comparison, fresh blueberries that sat on a supermarket shelf for 3 days under fluorescent lighting have already lost more than that. I already told you my freezer is permanently stocked. Blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, sometimes mango for variety, always there. No washing, no cutting, cheaper than fresh out of season. That isn't a compromise. That's just a smart habit. One real caveat, though, refreezing. If something was thawed and then frozen again, the slow second freeze creates large ice crystals that do rupture cell walls, and that's when vitamins actually get destroyed. How do you spot it at the store? The whole bag is fused into 1 solid frozen brick instead of individual pieces that move freely when you shake it. That bag I'd put back. Everything else take without hesitation. So, let's bring it together. Fruit with diabetes is allowed. That's the final word. It's not a minefield. The daily target is about 200 grams, 2 medium handfuls. The only question is, which fruit? Be more thoughtful with grapes, apples, pears, persimmon, and sweet cherries. They work better as part of a meal than eaten alone. And stop believing green apples are a safer pick than red ones. They aren't. Berries and citrus are your best choices. Avocado is excellent daily, especially if you're watching your cardiovascular health. Kiwi is the single best fruit for diabetics, particularly if digestion is something you're managing. Eat it with the skin on. Seriously, try it once.